And we do actually have an interactive session. We have some wonderful panelists, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to look at two important forces that are taking place globally. The first is food security or insecurity, and the second one is environmental sustainability. The UAE is very fortunate. We saw Andre's speech earlier. The UAE is growing. You have increase in population. You have a growth in tourism. At the same time, you also have environmental sustainability being a great force. And this is, again, very relevant because later this year, the UAE will be hosting COP28. So I think this is very timely and also very important for us to learn about how the food industry can actually capitalize on these opportunities. Now, my panel needs no introduction, but I'll introduce them as we go along. And I'd like to start off with Malachy, because Malachy, although I look very young, I've actually been here quite a long time. And I remember talking about food security for the last 20 years, if not longer, right? And I think the question is that over the last 2 decades or longer, can you tell us what has actually worked in food security and what actually hasn't?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ashraf. Good morning, everyone. Certainly it's an area of policy. I think perhaps maybe if we stand back slightly and say there are kind of 3 broad areas that I would like to touch on. One is policy, the other is Ag-Tech, and the last one then is local initiatives. So policy has evolved considerably, particularly over the last 10 years, and you could even say over the last number of years with geopolitical and COVID. They've provided a certain catalyst as well in terms of shifting food security as a kind of a policy item to one that is very much around action. And also I think food security now doesn't represent perhaps what's actually happening on the ground insofar as that it's moved more towards securing supply, as opposed to a kind of a scattered overseas investment approach, particularly within primary production, to a more value chain, vertical integrated approach. So not just looking at upstream, but also downstream, also considering things like logistics, and also ensuring that the investments are commercially based. And we know from working with clients that this is an area now that is being, as I said, taken very seriously. There's a lot of action. We see ADQ investment in Louis Dreyfus, Unifruit, obviously SALIC in Olam, and BRF, etc. So it's moving to direct investments in operating companies, which I think is a crucial part of the piece. And then also Ag-Tech. So there's been a lot happening in that area. It's still a very nascent technology, but it's rapidly evolving, and we have some great panelists here that would speak a lot more about that area. But it's making a contribution, and an increasing contribution. I think it's fair to say it's not the full solution, nothing is, but it will make a significant contribution from both a food supply, but also an environmental perspective as well. But local initiatives then that are taking place, and I think need greater impetus, is really around research and innovation. And that's where if you step back and take a look, particularly within Dubai and the wider UAE, and of course across the region, Saudi, etc., you see a very strong heritage around the industrial manufacturing, food manufacturing. And if you look at that ecosystem, you say there's a lot of biomass, a lot of byproduct, in other words, that can be used and valorized. And I think that's been really untapped at this stage. And that in conjunction with food waste. And we know that food waste is an increasing issue. It contributes to carbon emissions, but also it is part of the food security piece as well. And that can be addressed through education, more responsible consumption, etc. And in addition to that, I would say initiatives such as the Horizon program in Europe, which is a $100 billion program that essentially incentivizes the private sector along with the academia and research institutes to come together and solve problems, essentially, that are applicable to practical situations. I think similar programs here, be they at country level or across the GCC, would be certainly worth considering. Other things like precision agriculture, crop genetics, more resilience, drought resistance, etc., are going to be increasingly important in terms of bringing crops that can be produced locally here within the region.
Thank you, Malachy. Actually, I like the idea you talked about technology and research and innovation, because I genuinely believe that is actually a game changer. And I think that can make a huge difference to how we grow food and also how we can actually have inland sustainability. And you also talked about investment, which I'll pick on later. But let me go back to Agri-Tech. Feras, your company, extremely well known, right? And I think when we look at food security and we look at Agri-Tech, how can a company such as yours deal with the two problems that we have in the UAE? A, lack of arable land, and secondly, limited water resource.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. At Bostanica, we're the world's largest vertical farm, and we're proud to say that we're based in Dubai, just next to Al Maktoum Airport. So tackling these two things, I'll add one more, which is food imports, which is, again, something that we should keep looking at, especially at a region here, which is the GCC and UAE as well. So at the world's largest vertical farm, Bostanica, what we do is we grow 3 tons daily. We harvest 3 tons daily of produce, of green produce, which is 90 tons monthly, over 1 million ton yearly. And we're proud to say that this works towards the reducing the amount of imports of leafy greens that we use over here in the country. So coming back to the two questions that I would like as well to answer them, which is once we came up with building this facility, again, the world's largest vertical farm, we wanted to understand that first in this region and in the UAE as well, I'll keep emphasizing this, where we have less arable land and then scarcity of water. Because over here we use desalinated water, which costs us really a lot to produce. So at Bostanica, we use, first one coming to the water scarcity at the region, we use 95% less water than conventional farming. So just to give you an example, to grow 1 kg of leafy green usually requires 317 liters of water, whereas at Bostanica we use only 15 liters of water. So this really shows how arable land in the UAE as well. If you want to produce over 1 million ton yearly of produce as we do at Bostanica today, you would require 50 times the space required that we have. So right now Bostanica has 10,000 square meters on 3 floors. And again, we harvest over 1 million per year. If you want to grow this unconventionally, you would require 470,000 square meters of land. And we do it only in 10,000 square meters of land. So that's like 50 times the footprint, let's say, of the facility. So this is, again, a great achievement, I would say, towards sustainability and how we can make this country food secured when it comes to leafy greens.
Really what we've got are two wonderful things. A, technology, and then B, this ability to grow things domestically. So Andreas, you sell rice, right? And you also produce rice, of course, the most stable of all products.
Absolutely.
And now this leads us to the question, can we ever reach the holy grail of food security self-sufficiency? Because it's great to have leafy greens, and we can all eat leafy greens, but we need rice, right?
So that's a big question and comes with a lot of responsibility. Well, I see in this question, I see a lot of parallelism with the decision-making process that we have in Agrofoods before entering to a new country. So it's based in 4 stages. First one is evaluation and planification. So first of all, we look at the capabilities of the country, in this case, the UAE. We look at the natural resources that we have, availability of land, water. We also look at the knowledge that is being based in the country. Second thing that we look at this very stage is the consumer. Eventually, food security needs to be guided or or pursuing what the consumer wants. Eventually, you cannot force the people to consume something that they don't want, right? So this is something that is very important to bear in mind. Also, the financial impact that it will have in the private sector. So the investment that the company ourselves as a private sector will have to face, and also what is the support coming from the government. Obviously, this is a very important part, especially in these kind of topics. And so far, we have a good relationship with the government, which is great. And finally, in this first stage, I will try to summarize a little bit the infrastructure. So it's very important to have a good infrastructure, roads, ports, and airports that will allow us to move the goods around. Second stage that I wanted to tackle is the execution. We base our execution in 4 main pillars. One is the knowledge. Once we enter into a country, in this case in UAE, we bring every knowledge we have and we insert it into the country for the country to also get benefited of that. Second thing is water management. Here my colleagues have an extensive knowledge about it, and I will not come back again on that topic. Third and fourth are very important. One is the promotion of technology on agriculture. It's a very traditional sector, so promoting this technology will allow us to evolve, looking for the future, but also we think that we need to keep some kind of traditional bits and to make the farmer to play a very important role in all this planification with us. They are the brains and the hands for us in the fields, and it's very important. Then once we achieve these 2 first stages, we have the continuity. Continuity means for us diversification. So once we are established in a country, we try to expand our portfolio and what we can offer. And second thing is the education of the stakeholders, from the farmers until the consumers. They need to know what they are consuming, how is the best way of consuming, what is the impact of their consumption, and in this way we create an aura around the product that allow us to consume in a more responsible way. Another point about the continuity is the promotion of food security, which is a very important topic, and it can have hours of discussion, but 2 main points here is the financial support for stock management. So if we are talking about food security, we need big stocks to remain in the country to ensure that we have access to that stock, and trade policies. We need support from the government and from the private sector to secure the supply chain that is coming from abroad. And then finally, monitoring and adapting, because eventually our decisions are not perfect, and within the time we come to know about little mistakes or some things that can be corrected. And again, I like to highlight the important role of the authorities and the government to support us to reach other countries, other companies, and to have a mutual learning and support. So the summary of the summary, if you want me to do it, is a very long term. It takes a lot of time. We need the commitment from the community, private sector, and government. But always we need to keep an eye on the environment because we need to secure a future and a better world for the next generations.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I picked up on 2 very important things. One of them is the involvement of the private sector, and second one is infrastructure, right? Now, Suresh, you represent a private sector company. You know, it's great for governments when governments do food security because they don't have an ROI, right? They don't have shareholders to answer to. So that begs the question, why would a private sector company such as yours be interested to involve themselves in the food security arena?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Interesting question. So basically, to start with, we are a company that is well entrenched in the food business. So from distribution, catering, retail. We have a disruptive B2B platform within the food value chain, logistics as well. And we've been here for 30 years, so we're a homebred company born in the UAE, and we've been here for 30 years. So the national food security strategy is very well articulated, and we saw that there was a great future, and we believe with all conviction that the food sector will continue to flourish for the next several years. So upon research, we found that there was a business case to establish a food ecosystem, to organize and to consolidate food across all categories in the UAE. Not just a collection of real estate, but actually create an integrated ecosystem that will house all key players within the food sector. And we kind of built on this idea, and we proposed it to our public sector partners, which is namely the Abu Dhabi Ports Group. And that proposal was accepted, and now here we are. The project is active, and we are looking forward to building this, launching this ecosystem. And in many ways, it aligns very well with the National Food Security Strategy in terms of diversification of origins, because we are trying to promote new products from new origins to flow into the country. It's also a gateway for product that is produced in the country. So in many ways, it can encourage production, more and more investments into food production in the country, food safety as well, and I think more importantly, in terms of through efficient deployment of technology and cold chain and managing supply chain, to result in hopefully in reduction of wastage, which is a substantial topic. The statistics are quite shocking. I mean, globally, they say that with the food that is produced but never reaches a consumer, that can actually feed 2 billion people. So it's quite a shocking statistic. So we are also believe that when you say food security, there are various activities within that. And for this to be sustainable, these activities, they have to be commercially viable. So I think that's where when a public sector and private sector come together, there is this combination of agility plus, the patient capital that can eventually, hopefully, deliver a successful project.
Wonderful. The other thing that Andreas mentioned, which I think is very important, is the infrastructure. And this is where I'd like to bring you, Ahmed. We have so many free zones in Dubai and the UAE. Do we need another free zone, right, for food production?
Yeah. It's a very interesting question. I believe there is different type of businesses, different type of business model out there, and every type of business require a different type of setup. When it comes to free zone, 20, 30 years, the role that was back at that time is quite different than what the role is right now. It goes beyond, just setting a company that have 100% ownership. I think right now we are on a crossroad that actually you can open a mainland license with 100% ownership. However, the role goes beyond that. It goes through providing the right set of programs, providing the right set of services. This is the free zone, how it can support different type of businesses. For Food Tech Valley, the project is not mainly free zone. It's an economic zone. This is what we are calling it. And a majority of the land is actually mainland. At certain areas, we chose to have it as a free zone. And the reason behind that is that we, in the past year and a half, we went deep dive and just to analyze different type of businesses and what's their requirement. For us, as a Food Tech Valley, we are actually capturing the whole value chain. We're not only capturing one component of the whole F&B sector. We are capturing it from the pre-production, production, processing, packaging, distribution, even waste management. So for us to do that, and this is what we believe as a USP, because bringing all these people together, it allow collaboration and allow a better infrastructure setup for them and allow growth at the end of the day. So what we are trying to do is to analyze different type of businesses, and everyone have a different type of requirement. Some of them, their end users or customer base is actually overseas. So they need import. They need to have a setup to avoid something that is not needed, like VAT, corporate tax, and so on. But some companies, they actually produce to sell in the market. And there is a big gap to fill for production companies, I believe. So we need to set it in the right direction. There is no simple answer to provide, the right solution. Every business have a different requirement. And we work so hard to establish that understanding, enable us to create the right environment for growth. And right now it's much more clearer. It's very clear on what direction we are taking, and we are just progressing in that direction, mainly, with our partnership.
Thank you. And that certainly makes sense. It's certainly very important to look at every producer individually and what kind of services and infrastructure they need. But that also begs the next question, also to you, Ahmed, because I'm quite interested in this food valley. I think it's an amazing idea. What are the institutions that you have created or you plan to create to support the food sector?
Okay. So just to give you an overview what we are trying to do. The Food Tech Valley, it was launched by the vision of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and it is actually the backbone of the strategy of the Food Tech Valley is the National Food Security Strategy. We are trying to create an opportunity on ground for companies to grow. So what we are trying to do as an infrastructure and the program that we are trying to offer is to create this value chain. Because the focus, one of the main focus is actually to allow more homegrown businesses and food production. We are trying to bring the consumer closer to the end user, to eliminate as much as we can and to increase the margin for these businesses. So this is one thing. The second thing is that we are looking at actually in different type of programs. When you are talking about to the team 1 year and a half back, it's quite different what our understanding is right now. Why? Because when we looked at the businesses and we met as a team around 200 companies, more than 200 companies, just to understand what are the requirements. And in certain areas, we were very naive that we didn't know, because no one knows everything at the end of the day. So what we realize is that it's very important to allow collaboration in different segments. So the value chain I spoke about earlier, where we bring the whole value chain, it's closer together, is one component to grow. The second thing is that we are trying to have different strategic partnership to create the ecosystem that we are talking about today. And there is player that really helping us all to create this ecosystem, like the Ministry of Climate Change, the FMB Group. What they are doing as a collaboration is very vital, I believe, to connect us together. And Food Tech Valley is a platform for all the connection to happen, where actually the government can listen to the industry. The industry can also collaborate with different private sector and the government. And we want to create this collaboration model in order for us to expand these companies and make them flourish within the industry. And we are just at the beginning, I believe.
Wonderful. I'm sure it's going to be a marvelous journey. Just to remind you that we will take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand in a few minutes. And I'll just do another round of questions and I'll come back to the audience. We have ushers with a mic, so please get ready with your questions. Malachy, I'd like to go back to you. The traditional way of food security has been to buy food banks, typically in Africa, right? But Africa is a growing continent itself. It's going to have 400 million middle-class people. Population's growth is going to increase. And the question is then, Africa has very fertile land, but should it not be used for its own people? should there not be a different alternative food security initiative?
Yeah, Africa certainly has enormous potential, and it's important to look at where it is today. I mean, about $80 billion they spend every year in importing food, which is an absolute travesty. And if you break down that, 40% of that is edible oil, sugar, and grains. And these are all the things that Africa should produce, and not just produce in a self-sufficient way, but also export. So certainly Africa needs to address its own needs and prioritize its own needs, and that's really, really important for obvious reasons. And look, it's important to say as well, sometimes Africa is looked upon as a homogenous country. It's not. It's a continent with 54 countries, separate cultures, and obviously many different climatic zones. But there is nothing you cannot produce in Africa in terms of food. It has the capacity to be a major global breadbasket. So the GCC is nestled in a part of the world that is unkind, to be fair, to primary agriculture. It's got 1% arable land, and the reality is self-sufficiency around primary agriculture will never happen here in terms of the wide variety and diversity of crops and animal protein. So Africa, definitely there is opportunity for collaboration, for investment in Africa. And I think Africa is open for business. But of course that has to be on an ethical and a win-win basis where there is real contribution to local communities and the development of local communities. And Africa as a continent, and we know this from working on different initiatives through the African Union, there's various initiatives with over 100 agro-industrial parks planned for right across the continent. And why are they being planned? That's to develop the value chain system within the continent, which is crucial. Because really what they need to do is drive aggregation. And if we look at Europe in particular, and I come from Ireland, where the cooperative movement has been really successful in terms of bringing aggregation. And aggregation is important because it brings supply power to primary production. And then you can actually drive a downstream processing ecosystem, if you like. And that is essentially the food system. And Africa now sees that's where it needs to move. So there is opportunity. We see a growing interest. We see growing interest that is now transitioning into action within a number of different countries across Africa from this region. Not just in East Africa, but obviously there and beyond. And one last point I'd like to make. Take a country like Ghana. It imports $1 billion a year of rice. What that does in economic terms, it drains its foreign reserves. It weakens its currency. It drives up its inflation. The cost of food increases. That contributes to malnutrition and hunger. So there's a real humanitarian element to all of this at the end of the day. And Africa has the potential. Unfortunately, it's still more in potential than reality, but I do think that is going to change, and the opportunity certainly is for this region as well.
I totally agree with you because I've done a lot of work in Africa, especially with some of the countries in terms of food, post-harvest food management, yes. And I think it certainly is a great potential. But then that also leads for us to a question to you. I mean, you're using Agri-Tech, right? And you're doing wonderful different products. I think over 80 products you mentioned.
At the moment we do like 12 different products at our facility, but we're still, we have lots in the R&D.
So when do we get to the stage, or do we get to the stage where we can have wheat, we can have rice, we can have normal fruits and vegetables that we eat on an everyday basis grown through your production process?
To answer your question, at the moment with this technology around every aspect of our life, especially in Agri-Tech in the last decades, let's say, today at vertical farming, we can grow anything. We can grow trees, fruits, leafy greens, whatever we can grow. But for us, we always put into consideration what's viable for us and then what's in demand in our market that we're in. So a company like us, we're owned by Emirates Flight Catering. We looked into different aspects of the things that we can do in order for us to reduce, again, importations to the country. So leafy green is one of them. We started with leafy greens, as I said, and then we developed multiple cultivars, like microgreens, edible flowers, strawberry in the R&D, and still we have so many to explore. So yeah, answering your question, we can grow at the moment anything in vertical farming, but it depends on what the market demand is, and then what we can tackle for us to reduce the importation, and whether if it's viable for us to grow or not. With the technology is coming day by day, again, maybe today something which is not viable for us to do, in the future it is, then yes, I can say yes. But at the moment, we can grow anything, but we choose what to grow. This is how I can answer it very in a short term.
Yeah, I suppose it makes sense for a private company that you do things with, give you a rate of return, especially for your shareholders. And that also links to what Andrea said earlier in terms of investment. You need investment for food security, especially sustainable food security that is good for the environment. The question is, what type of investment is required?
Well, again, this is a very open question, but when we think about investment, we always think about ports, roads, these kind of things. It's also important, and sometimes we tend to forget that we need to educate. We believe that we need to invest a lot on educating all the stakeholders of the industry. As I said before, from the farmer until to the consumer. We need to make them part of this commitment, and we need to make them be motivated to build this food security system that we want to do. So we need to support them on growing and farming in a responsible way. Also, we need to all the suppliers that we have to support them and to educate them on how we do evolve, for example, on packaging. For example, on the road transportation, how we can make it more efficiently. And last but not least, obviously ourselves. We take the hit, the first one, but obviously, as I was saying, the consumer. The people need to be motivated to consume food in a responsible way, and they need to feel part of this food security system that we want to build. Eventually, we can have authorities, government, and private sector committed to it, but if the consumer eventually doesn't feel part of it, it will not succeed. So this is really an investment or initiative that we believe that should be taken into account very, very strongly.
That's a very important point, is that it's a partnership, government, private sector, and the consumer. If you don't have these three elements together, you have a missing link. But Suresh, you're a private company, right? You are partnering with government. You're creating a two-way public-private partnership. Is this the most appropriate model to create ammunition for investment in food security?
Yeah, absolutely, because today if you see the various activities across the food value chain, right from inputs to production, distribution, reaching the product to the consumer, you see that the government and the private sector have invested within the various elements of this value chain. And there needs to be an alignment in terms of the activities and the resources that are being deployed into these activities. Otherwise it kind of leads to duplication in certain cases and resources not being properly utilized. And it's always interesting in when it comes to public-private partnerships, because both the parties have skin in the game, right? So it kind of makes it more commercially viable. At the same time, the alignment with the food security strategy of the country ensures that the activities kind of eventually will meet that ambition, right? And also, I just wanted to comment on the earlier question on whether we can grow rice, etc. I think the one of the key pillars of the strategy here is to diversify the origin. It's not necessarily the objective to try to grow everything here, because there is a constraint in terms of the number of consumers. So it's more about how do we create highly optimized supply chains with access to origin, and in certain cases even origin control through investing, strategic investing, like we were talking about investing into Africa, for example.
Perfect, wonderful. We've got a few minutes. We've got a few minutes that we can take questions from the audience. If anybody has a question, can you please raise your hand, and then the ushers will come with the mic. The gentleman over there. Do we have a mic? Can we get a mic across? Would you like to stand up to make it easier for the ushers? There you go. Or perhaps you can shout, and then... Oh no, we're getting the mic there.
Question to the panel. There's a very vibrant family farming sector in the UAE with over 40,000 family farms. And they all struggle to market their products. So in spite of all this pressure on food security, the reality is that a lot of the local farmers are unable to market their farms. How are these initiatives market their produce? How are these initiatives going to help the local farmers to get priority versus imported produce?
Actually, before I handle that over to the panelists, I'll just say that's a global question, because when I worked in Africa, that was a static question that we always had, is that you have small holders. How do the small holders do post-harvest management, invest in infrastructure, and then get their products into the domestic and global market, right? I think I'd like to take that question straight to you, Ahmed, seeing as you are the Food Valley.
I don't know if you can hear me now, but this question is very important. I believe there is a big opportunity. The ministry have a lot of plans, engaging different dialogues with all these stakeholders, farmers, and so on. One of the things that we need to highlight is that establishing the product is very important. And many of the farm, to be real about the issue, when they are facing with a market that is open market, sometimes they struggle. Why? Because the produce that they are producing, it costs a certain amount. When compared with what's imported, sometimes they struggle. So choosing the right produce, the right type of crops, high value crops is very important. I think this is one of the most important things. And the second thing is that adopting new technologies. Sometimes when you compete with different countries that they have rain, they have other type of crops, we have other alternatives, but it's very important to adopt the right type of technology for their growth. So I believe right now we are in the right direction. And actually situating different technologies and involving the farmer to adopt these type of technologies, working together to adopt the type of product that we actually should produce and to avoid a certain product that we should avoid. And I believe the ministry have a great initiative in that direction, and very important because we have many people who is very passionate, but they are struggling because mostly when someone comes and go sell in the open market or the vegetable market, there's no way to compete. But I want to add is that what the ministry is trying to do is to actually create an opportunity within. They started with the government sector to allow a certain purchase from the local producer. This is one thing. The second thing is to close to the end user, to make it much closer to the end user, and to have agreement with different supermarket chain to give them allocation, create this type of opportunity for them to grow. Sometimes when we speak with the supermarket, they say, but it's not sustaining. We need something that is sustaining. This is the reality. But we see that we are going in the right direction. And if you just look at what's been there for a year and a half or 2 years in the supermarket, sometimes you struggle to find something locally produced. But now, a big percentage of the supermarket is locally produced, which is, I think, is a big achievement within the 2 years that have passed. And I believe there is many initiatives that will continue to evolve the locally produced food.
Feras, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sorry. I do have something. I do have something to add on this because we come from agri-farming at Bostanica. So, as Ahmed said, it's all about creating your product. So, for us at Bostanica, we do compete like imported products, but we don't compete with conventional farming. How we compete with imported products, which is we create or we develop a product which is with the highest quality. So we're like zero pesticides, zero herbicides, and you can find us in all the retailers' store at a convenient local produced product. So by that, creating the segment, and in a country or in a city of Dubai, which everyone looks into healthier items, healthier products. And we've listened earlier to Andre from Nielsen as well, that the premium product segment grew by 34% in the country. So people are looking into those quality products. So this is where you can compete when you create or develop a quality product which is healthier and has more nutrition. That's the way where you can really say, yes, we have a locally produced product that we don't have to create a market for it, because there is a market. The penetration segment of that product is there. So when we say we're zero chemicals, zero herbicides, zero pesticides, we urge our consumer at all our retailers, which is our brand Bostanica, available today at most of the retailers here in the UAE. Don't wash the product. It comes, we never washed it. It comes from the highest quality in controlled environment, which is the world's largest vertical farm. We don't wash it, we don't sanitize it, because we use zero chemicals on the product. And we urge our consumers in the UAE, HoReCa, end users and retail, even at Emirates Flight Catering, when we serve over 110 airlines with our produce, we don't, and we tell our consumer and end user, don't wash our product, because if you wash it, you will contaminate it even with your tap water. This is how the trust that we have, this is the trust we do, and want to communicate this to the end user at Bostanica.
Does anybody want to add something to that? Malachy?
Just an interesting observation. In Europe, so primary production, primary processing, you very seldom see on-balance sheet investment on farms. Usually it's off-balance sheet. In other words, it's supplied from the family farm structure. There's a deep heritage, etc. So your father or your mother's a dairy farmer, previous generations are poultry, whatever the case may be. And I think that is an untapped resource here. And I certainly think that the primary processing sector should look at that in terms of, because from a pure economics perspective, investing in farms, if you're in the vertical integrated system, is actually not the best place to invest. You should be investing in more downstream assets and specializing, etc. So there is absolutely, I agree, there's an enormous untapped resource, and it is very much around growing the right produce as well. And the last thing is the cooperative structure is also, there's a role there for aggregation, there's a role for branding local produce and promoting it more, so consumers can identify with what's local, etc. And of course technology will play a role in all of that as well.
Wonderful. I think we can carry on talking for a very, very long time, but I've been told that we need to finish. But as we do, can I just have one parting comment from each one of my panelists? I'll start off with you, Feras. Just one sentence, and then we'll finish.
Excuse me. In Dubai and the country of UAE, we're looking like it's becoming, and it is, the innovation hub of all technologies across the platforms and businesses. Today at Bostanica, really the world's largest farm, we're really, I would say, proud of having this facility. And we're proud that 80% of the technology and the build that was happened at Bostanica is made in the UAE. We had so many sustainable awards. The first, like we got ranked #1 in UAE in 2022. In MENA, we were #3 on sustainability. And the worldwide, we were 22 on over 200 projects. So we're really proud to say that this facility exists and located in the UAE. We produce the highest standard quality of produce that, again, it's not washed because it's in a very hygienic, controlled environment, zero chemicals, and we urge our consumers and end users, retailers, HoReCa, or everywhere sells, please don't wash the product. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one sentence, please, Malachy.
Okay, keep this short. I would say, excuse me, in the world today, there's about 800 million people suffering from hunger. There's 2 billion suffering from overnutrition. What we need is nutrition for all. We need to protect the planet. We need to do it through resilient agriculture, and we need to do it through responsible consumption as well.
Thank you. Ahmed, again, one sentence.
I think there is a big percentage of the water that is actually consumed goes to agriculture. And many of the industry that we are talking about, or the companies, rely on that type of agriculture. We need to look at different type of technologies. I'm not talking about focusing on bringing robots and taking picture of it, no. What we need to do is to look at the right type of technology that can work as a mix for the type of environment and to create the product around it. This is the most important thing in order for us to solve the food security issue and to eliminate, because technology it does have the opportunity to actually solve many of these challenges.
Thank you. Again, very quickly, Andreas.
Very quickly. I think that with the vision of our leaders and well, the commitment of the private sector, I think that we are moving to the right direction, and we are becoming a real model that inspires many, if not all, the countries in the world. And I'm very proud of that and being part of this amazing project. Thank you so much.
Suresh, last sentence.
Yeah, so I think for us to be successful collectively, I think collaboration and transparency is the key for success.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank my panelists for a wonderful session, and that brings us to the end of today's panel session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.